Hello, good evening, everybody.
Hello. Please, I think you should wait till it's like 2 minutes or 3 minutes so that more
Okay,
students can join.
okay, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, sir. Yeah, thanks, man. Hello, man. Please, I think we can start
So,
the class. It's already time.
okay, okay. Do we have more students in the waiting room?
No, we don't have any student in waiting room.
All right. Thank you very much.
And thank you, man.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Adesua. I'm your lecturer for taxation today. I guess it's past 9 and we can get started. Okay, so you're welcome to this class. I guess we all had a very great day and we are ready for our class today. Last week started last week Thursday. That's when I commenced the class with you. For those just joining us for the very first time, you're welcome to today's class. Okay. For taxation, we have two lecturers taking the courses. You have Prof. Chima and then you have Adesua. Prof. Chima will take you for taxation on Friday also. Well, take you for taxation on Thursday. So there's a material, well, we in our previous class for last week, we had material which was shared for section 1. If you are a new student and you don't have the material, you can prioritize me and I'll send it to you, either through the Zoom WhatsApp group or I'll send it personally to your WhatsApp also. So you're welcome. This is section 2 and we'll commence immediately. Let's get started. So this section, so let's just go through the class rules for today's class. The rules for today's class. So for FCA online video lecture, we're expected to be aware of the following rules that will guide us for our online class. First and foremost, students are expected to be muted both on audio and video. The essence of this is to avoid distraction on the part of the students and also for the lecturer. So just to ensure you are coordinated, you can mute your video, your audio and your video at the same time. Then students are also allowed to use the chat button to ask what questions. When you go to your options, you see chat. During the course of the class, if you have any question, kindly send your questions in, and after the lectures, I will attend to your questions. Okay. Then in case of technical difficulties, probably due to network problem, you are being logged out or logged in, just send a chat to the Zoom WhatsApp platform, which you've been added already, or you can call this helpline also. Both to be very perfect for us to attend to you. Then thirdly, students are expected to be cordial and professional when using the chat button to ask questions or express their concerns. Any questions you don't understand, ask, or just ensure you are being cordial and professional. Okay, then students are also advised to listen attentively during lectures rather than writing. You know the materials has been shared before time, so just ensure you listen attentively, and after the lectures, you can also go through the notes for you to understand completely. Since lecture materials will be provided, we've noted that already. So you can have your jotting notes and your pen alongside with you to always jot. All questions will be attended to after the lectures. This to ensure that we keep to time and we deliver effectively all that we have planned to learn today. Then feel free to call or chat me, ask your questions after the class. You can always chat me. I think I'll just drop my number. So if you have your jotter and your pen, you can note my number. My name is Adesua once again. My phone number is 081-866-53263. I'll call it again, 081-866-53263. So in the course of this period, these online lectures from now till July, if you have any questions regarding any part of the syllabus that we've covered or other areas that you've read on your own, you can private chat me and I will attend to you, or call me directly. I will attend to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much. So let's go further. In our last class, we looked at two topics. We were able to cover two topics in our last class, okay? So for this class, we'll be looking at what? Tertiary education tax, and we'll also be looking at returns, assessments, and collection procedures, okay? I believe you can all see my screen. So let's look at tertiary education tax. When we hear of tertiary education tax, where do our mind go to? Okay, education is already there, meaning this act has to deal with a form of taxation that involves education, right? But we need to know, one, the act, what does the act contain, what the revenue generated for this type of tax, what is it used for by the government, and so on. The tax authority that is allowed to receive the tax from companies, okay, on behalf of the government, and so on and so forth. So we'll be going into details to know what Tertiary Education Act is all about. So during the course of the class, you get to hear me making use of education tax, which is also a short form, either education tax or tertiary education tax, whichever is what more convenient for you. But I just want you to be familiar. In case I mention education tax, you know what exactly I'm referring to. So in Nigeria, for Nigeria tax system, okay, education tax was actually introduced first in 1993, okay, then it was later known as Education Tax Act in 2004. But now, in the year 2011, it was later what named as what Tertiary Education Fund. That's the act, okay? What's the aim of this act? What's the objective of this Education Act that was introduced by federal government? Okay, the aim is to involve both what private sectors beneficiaries of the product of education to partake in the word funding. We already know in this day, we know about the educational system in Nigeria, okay? The essence of federal government introducing this tax is to ensure just to their major aim was to ensure that both what private sectors they are involved in what contributing to the development of the education sector in Nigeria. This act actually was this for this act, companies are the ones involved in remitting this form of taxation, education tax towards federal government. So private sectors, companies are what's registered. There's a way they have to remit a certain percentage of what accessible profits, which is in form of education tax. Then this money is being received by the what tax authority. We'll look at that during the course of the class. Okay. So that's the major objective, just to ensure that they will contribute to the what to the development on what to the development and partake in the funding of the what of the education sector in Nigeria. Well, during the introduction of this particular act, this education act, okay, there are a lot of criticisms against this act, but we already know the taxpayers, especially for companies, they are complaining our profits are being subjected to different form of tax. We already pay company income tax, right? For our sales every month, for the revenue generated by our company every month, we also pay what value added tax, which is also another form of taxation, and so on and so forth. For petroleum, for companies that are into what petroleum products, they also pay tax. So they just felt education tax was also another form of taxation, where another means where government to what generate what revenue, and their we are all Nigerians. We already know our fear about that. They always ask this tax that is being deducted from individuals and from companies. How are they utilized? Can we see? Can we actually see the utilization of these funds in our economic system and so on and so forth? Okay, so that's part of the criticism against this form of what tax. If we contribute this certain percentage of our income to the educational system, will we see the effects? Okay, and so on and so forth. So those are their criticisms. Okay, then for now, because that's their general perception, okay, then for Tertiary Education Act, okay, the fund was specifically used for the provision and maintenance of the following. The main reason why this act was established was to provide the following. One, to ensure that there is essential physical infrastructure for teaching and learning, okay, in the universities, in our polytechnics, in our colleges of education, to ensure that there are physical infrastructures for the classrooms. You have your boards, you have your chairs, basic infrastructure, buildings, okay, basic infrastructures that are needed for various universities, polytechnics, colleges of education, laboratory, and all, okay. These infrastructures, the infrastructure should be conducive for what? Both teaching and learning, okay? Then another provision was to ensure that infrastructure and materials and equipment are made available. Just for instance, for the laboratories have to be well equipped to ensure that those taking a particular course or going into a particular seat have the necessary material equipment available in their schools to ensure that to make their learning process much easier. Okay. Then for research and publication, okay, that was part of the aim for this act. Academic staff training and what development. Other needs, in opinion of the board of what trustees, the board of trustees of Tertiary Education Act is critical, as long as any other need that is critical and is essential for the improvement of quality and what maintenance of standards in higher educational institutions. Okay, so let's go forward. This Tertiary Education Act, how is it computed? Basically, it is this tax is what is charged on what company is charged on, is assessed to only what company income tax in an assessment year. Okay, company income tax in an assessment year. So it means as what for a company charges a company is charged what the rate of 2% of accessible profit of his what accessible profits in a particular assessment year. 2% of it goes towards education tax. The tertiary education tax is usually imposed or due and payable within 8 to 60 days after FRS has was served notice of assessment on a company. So let me explain this basically. We already know that on an annual base, which means every year, companies are expected to what? Submit their audited financial statements to the relevant tax authority, which is what? FRS. So at the end of every year, at the end of the accounting year of a company, within 6 months, they're expected to submit their audited financial statement to FRS. And their audited financial statement also, they are all in submitting that, there are also other documents that are what's required to file. You are required to also submit your tax computation. So it's this tax computation that actually shows the what that gives the details, the breakdown of what on how on the profits, on the revenue that was generated by the organization, okay, the profit that was also generated by the organization. I don't know how many of you have seen a standard tax computation, okay, but for a tax computation, usually you always have your what your profit, your net profit that was brought forward, okay, then you add your what disallowable expenses and so on and so forth. By the time you arrive at your accessible profit, okay, 2% of that accessible profit is what education tax. So whatever you have, let's say your accessible profit for a particular year was 200 naira. 2% of 200 naira is what you charge as what education tax. So while you are submitting your documents, your tax computation, you're submitting to FRS, okay, the details of those tax are what is stated, the amount that you bought, that the total tax for education tax as it was stated there. So within 60 days that you have submitted the necessary documents, within 60 days, they are expected to what? To make the what necessary payments to FIRS. Then let's go further. Assessment and what? Collection. For assessment, how does FIRS what assess and collect this tax from each company? Sorry. Okay, we are together now. For assessment and collection, FRS assesses and collects for each company. Okay, FRS is the relevant tax. They are the tax authority in charge of what? Of collecting education tax on behalf of federal government. They receive this education tax from what? From companies. Okay, I've stated that before. Either those they are imposed on company income tax, or those are also involved in what? Petroleum activities. Okay, so this act provides the following. One, it says when assessing a company for company's income tax or petroleum profit tax for an accounting period of the company, FRS shall also proceeds to assess the company for education tax due. So other than company income tax, the company is expected to what? To be assessed, and for a company to also remit, it's FRS duty to ensure that this company is also assessed on what? Education tax, and it remits the education tax to what? FIRS. Secondly, the provision of this act, okay, relates to the collection of company income tax applicable to education tax due under this what? Act. So in remitting this for FRS, while collecting the education tax on behalf of the government, okay, what they do is that once the companies pay to FRS, okay, once the company pays to FRS, can you hear me? Okay. Once the company pays to FRS, okay, what they do is that they remit this what the fund that was collected, they remit to what tertiary education fund. And while they remit to tertiary education fund, they have to also submit some documents that are that are what's required. The documents, okay, the form must include what while they are giving them the funds, some details are required. Some details are required. One, the name of the company making the payment. Two, the amount that was collected by the company. Thirdly, the accessible profit of the company for the what accounting period. These informations have to be what made available. The accessible profit of the company for the what accounting period. I don't know if we have seen the education tax form, okay, that is usually filled while filing for your education tax. All these stated there, the name of the company making the payments. Let's assume the name of the company is excuse me. Let's assume the name of the company is Kehinde, okay? So Kehinde Limited, that's the name of the company. Amount collected. The amount collected was, let's say, 20 naira, okay? The accessible profit of the company for the accounting period, because they also want to ascertain how accurate the information is. So once they have the accessible profit, they'll be able to know if the amount what collected for education tax is also what accurate. So those are the details that are required. Then any other information that is required by what tertiary education trust what fund for the proper administration of education tax. Then for the board of trustees, before they disperse the amounts to the fund, there's usually a board of trustees, okay, who will look at the composition of the board of trustees very soon. For the board of trustees, the amount of fund received, they will always set aside a certain amount, not exceeding, which is not more than 5%. This amount set aside is usually kept towards to fund the following. One, cost of administration and management of the what funds. This board, okay, they are running costs, the cost of administration to manage the fund. This 5%, maximum of 5% is kept aside for the following: cost of administration and management of the fund. Secondly, maintenance of any property acquired by the fund, okay, generally to pay services rendered to the fund, etc. For projects or to monitoring, probably projects that universities, colleges of educations and polytechnics are already was carrying out. They have to go and ensure that those projects are was implemented. The money was not only dispersed, but it was also utilized for the what for the purpose that the project was approved for. Are we together? So to meet any other needs that will be required by the what board of directors, they ensure they don't exceed more than what 5% of the total money. So let's move forward. The tertiary education trust fund. Let's look at their management and what and the administration. This board of trustees, their sole responsibilities, they are saddled with the responsibility of management and administration of the fund. Okay. So what they do is that they administer tax imposed by the act and disperse the amount in the fund towards federal and state tertiary education institutions in the country. Please note, private tertiary institutions are not included, okay? Just federal and state tertiary education institutions within the country. And the country here, we are referring to what? To Nigeria, okay? So the board of directors, what are their composition? Please, like I said in our first class last week, okay, I made mention of the the format of your exam questions, okay, in this new syllabus for taxation. Okay, I mentioned that section A has 20 20 questions and 20 multi-choice questions. And these 20 multi-choice questions covers both theories and calculations. So it is very important, please, don't only focus on the calculation aspect of taxation. Also focus on the theory aspect. It will help you, especially at this level, if you can gain this knowledge when you get to your professional level. Okay, when you're doing advanced taxation, it will make understanding very what's easy for you. Aside that, even in your practice, okay, for those of us that are accountants and all that carry out every other account related field, okay, or even when you go for interviews, it's important for you to know these details because it will also help you what you get to use them in your day-to-day practice. So please, no knowledge is wasted. Let's also try to know the theoretical what aspect. So you can be asked in the theory part, what is the composition of the board of directors? Or the following and the following below are not among the what composition of the board of directors, and you see your options for you to what pick. So board of trustees the board of trustees consists of the following. One, it consists of a chairman. Then the 6 geopolitical zone in the country are being what represented. Okay. The 6 geopolitical zones in the country are being represented. Okay. So that's making the chairman one. We have 6 geopolitical zones. That's 6, making 7 members already of this board of trustees. Then from the ministry, for the Ministry of the Federal Ministry of Education, you have to be a representative, and whoever is representing the Federal Ministry of Education has to be someone not below the rank of what a director. So making what the eighth member of the board. Then we also have a representative from the universities. The universities in Nigeria, they will have one representative, making 9. Then a representative from Polytechnic, 10, representative from colleges of what education. Okay. Then executive secretary of tertiary education trust fund. Okay, I think this 1 plus 6, 7. A member of Federal Ministry of Education, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So making a total sum of 13 members of Board of Trustees for Tertiary Education Trust Fund. So let's go further. Then for the members of this board, okay, the member will they will hold their first the first tenure is usually for a period of 4 years. However, they can also be eligible for reappointment, but they do not. The maximum tenure allowed for a board of trustee member is 8 years. An ex-official can only excluding an ex-official, like we have seen, shall hold office for a term of 4 years, and then after that you can also be eligible for a reappointment, but no more than 4 years. Please also take note of that. Then the board shall also conduct their meetings 4 times in a calendar year. Okay, they will meet to conduct any other business relating to their functions. So this board of trustees, what are their functions? What do they actually do? Okay, what do they actually do to promote this? The functions are: 1, they help to monitor and ensure collection of tertiary education at FRS, and to ensure the transfer to the fund. They monitor the collection. By the time companies remit to FRS, they also ensure that FRS also remits this amount to the fund, giving them the following the details, like as we've seen earlier. It said it will request for the name of the company, the amount that was paid, the amount that was collected. So at least with all those details, they will have an idea of the amount to expect from FIRS. Then another function is that they manage and dispose the fund. Like we said earlier, we said this board of trustees, okay, Once they receive the fund, 5%, no more than 5% is kept aside for the cost of administrations and so on and so forth. While the others, they disperse the funds. There's a ratio that is allowed in accordance to this act, okay? And those that are also what expected to receive this fund on behalf of what government, of federal government, to ensure that the education sector, the funds is being disbursed to improve the education sector. So let's also go forward. Another function is that they ministries or bodies responsible for collection or safekeeping of the what of the tax. They receive requests and approve admittable projects after due what considerations. So you have universities, colleges of educations, polytechnics, okay, they send their request. Oh, we have a project and we will want to, we will need this fund to execute the project. So the board of trustees are the ones that they receive the request, and once it's approved, they also administer, they disburse the amount to the what, to the necessary what, to the receivers. Okay. They also ensure the disbursement of funds to various public tertiary education institutions in Nigeria. Okay. They monitor and evaluate execution of what projects. Like I said earlier on, whenever money is being disbursed for a particular project, they also what monitor it. Oh, let's say for instance, University of Benin. Okay, a particular fund was disbursed to University of Benin to carry out a project, probably let's say borehole, to ensure that there is water in the school. Okay, so they have to go probably to find out, oh, has this been carried out? Okay, the amount requested, has it been utilized by for the project? Okay, and so on and so forth. So they monitor and evaluate the execution of the what project. Then they also invest funds in appropriate and safe what securities. Then they update the federal government on its activities and progress through annual and audited world reports. So at the end of the year, through the annual and audited reports, okay, that will show the amount that was received by FRS, the amount that they spent for projects, okay, and so on and so forth. A minute, please. Okay, okay, I'm back. Sorry for that. Okay, let's continue, please. They update the federal government on their activities and progress through their audited reports, okay, on a yearly basis. Then they review the progress and suggest what improvements if there are other areas they need to improve on. Okay. They make and issue guidelines from time to time to all beneficiaries on disbursement from the fund and the use of monies received into the what fund. Okay. Then they regulate the administration, application, and disbursement of monies from the World Fund. Any other such thing that are required by this board is carried out. However, they have to inform the that may be assigned by the federal government of of Nigeria. Then for the allocation and distribution of tax, the tax collected, how is it allocated and how is it distributed? The total tax collected in a year is usually disposed in a ratio of 2 to 1 to 1. Okay. For the tax, we have what the beneficiaries are the universities, polytechnics, and what colleges of education. So the university take 2/4 of the amount, okay, disbursed. Let's say a sum of 1 million naira was disbursed. Okay. So universities are to take in this ratio, universities are to take 2/4 of that amount, which is 50%. So 50% of 1 million is what? 500,000. So the universities are what they are giving what 500,000. Polytechnics will take what 1/4 of the amount, which is 25%. They will take 250,000. The colleges of education will receive what 250,000 naira. So the board of trustees, they have the power to also give considerations to give due considerations to peculiarities in geopolitical zones. No members of geopolitical zones are already part of the board of trustees, okay? Or just to, in case there are peculiar areas that they need to, yes, pay attention to, and so on and so forth. Then for the Minister of Education, okay, can also recommend to the board of trustees, subject to the approval of the president, to make guidelines for the disbursement of the board under the act, okay? But they just need to ensure while disbursing the amount, that the funding for all public tertiary educational institutions, okay, is what it's allocated. Then they also need to ensure among the 6 geopolitical zones that there is equality, not where they will favor one part of the geopolitical zone over the other, okay? There's equality when it comes to what allocation of the fund. And there's also equality among the states of the federation in case of regular what interventions. Okay, let's go on. Offenses and penalties. What is it? Well, is it an offense not to pay education tax? If you don't pay education tax, what are you liable to? Okay, as a company. Okay, let's go through that. For offenses and penalties, for education tax, okay, like I said earlier on, when a company submits its audited financial statement alongside with tax computation, okay, within 60 days, you're expected to what? Pay your education tax. 60 days is how long? 60 days is 2 months. Let's say if a month 30 days, so that's 2 months. Within 2 months, you're expected to remit your education tax to FIROS. However, in this case, if after 60 days you do not remit, okay, FIRS will give a demand notice of the unpaid tax to the company, which will equal to the demand notice is usually 5% of the tax. So let's say the tax you have to pay is what 1,000 naira. That's the amount, that's the tax due, the education tax due by your company. Okay, they'll give you a demand notice of 5% of that what amount. Then in addition, you can also be asked to pay an interest based on the bank lending rate within the time that the tax was payable. Okay. However, if after that 2 months payment is still not made by the company, you'll also be given a further period of 2 months. So making it a total of 4 months. Okay. Then in this case, if after not education tax, the company is guilty of an offense. Remember the first case, within 60 days, there's a penalty, but you're not yet guilty. But after 4 months, okay, the company is guilty of an offense. So FIRS will write to the board of trustees, okay, and with the approval, you'll be required to remit the whole money, the unpaid tax, the penalty of the previous one, okay. But in the case where we've mentioned that it's companies that actually pay this education tax, okay. In the case whereby an officer or a staff of the company can be held liable for not remitting education tax, yes, it is an offense. In fact, when you are found guilty, okay, you are liable to the following. For the first offense, that's the one of within 60 days, your fine could be up to 1,000,000 naira, or you'll be imprisoned for a period of 6 months. Then for the second one, if it's also within a period of 4 months, for the second one, subsequent offense, your fine will be a maximum of what, a fine of up to, but the maximum of 2 million naira, and the officer or the staff can also face imprisonment for what, 12 months. But except you can prove to the relevant tax authority that this actually took place without your knowledge or without your consent, you are not aware. Ignorance is not an excuse when it comes to laws, okay, tax law. But if you can prove that this actually occurred without your knowledge or consent, then that can be what, overlooked as an officer. Or you still have to pay the education tax that is due and the various sort of penalties. Then we have a very short example. Okay, let's look at exercise 1. Believe we are together. We have XYZ Limited has been in business for 4 years. Okay, that, which means the company is an existing company that has existed for a period of 4 years. An extract from the company's financial records for the year ended 31st December 2013 is as follows. So for the company, they're giving us the capital allowance for the year, which is 2,400,000. The total profit for the company for that year is 800,000. Okay. Depreciation is what, 960,000. Then you have sales, which is the revenue for that company for the particular year, 110 what? 110 million naira. So required, compute the tertiary education tax for the relevant assessment year. Okay. Then let me also say this. For education tax, most times when this kind of question comes out in your section B, okay, most times it may be a component of a question that relates to company income tax. For instance, you have a full question, part of the requirement to be one to calculate the company income tax liability of that company for the relevant years of assessment. When, irrespective of if it was stated there that you should also compute for education tax, please, whenever you are doing your calculation for company income tax, your tax computation, income tax will come in, and the education tax, which is 2% of accessible profit, will also come in. So for this exercise and assignments that I gave you here, these are just short questions. They are just extracts. But for exam purpose and in practice, okay, education tax is usually what most times is already, it's included in part of the what requirements, whether it's stated there or not. When you're doing your tax computation, we'll get to that part where we'll solve questions on company income tax, so you understand what I'm saying better. Okay, so you see whether it's stated there or not, accessible profit. After calculating company income tax, you put the amount. You also charge us education tax in bracket 2% of accessible profit. You do your calculation and write your amount. The total of your education tax and your company income tax will give you the total tax liability of the company for the particular what period. Okay, so let's look at this short exercise. XYZ Limited has been in business for 4 years. An extract, okay, I've looked at the question already. So what's the requirement here? They are required to compute the tertiary education tax for the relevant assessment year. Excuse me. So let's look at the computation. This is XYZ Limited, okay? Computation of tertiary education tax for the year ended 31st December 2013. Please, these are important steps that should not be overlooked. First and foremost, it is important for you to write the name of the company that you're calculating for. What's the name of the company? XYZ Limited. What's the requirement? Computation of tertiary education tax for the year ended 31st December 2013. All of these will make you have your full marks. Then what's the currency? Is in naira. Okay. So to get our education tax, how do we get it? First, the total profit for the year was what? 800,000. The capital allowance given to us in the question, we have to add our capital allowances to get accessible profit. Capital allowance is what? 2,400,000. Total accessible profit is what? 3,200,000. Okay. Tertiary education tax is 2% of accessible profit. So if you use your calculator, okay, 2% of 3,200,000 will give you what? 64,000 naira. As simple as that. Okay. So please, you do this assignment for me and ensure you submit them. You can send them through the WhatsApp class, or you chat me up privately and submit. Please, between now and Saturday, you should submit the assignment. So you just have 2 questions here. 2 questions for the assignment. Okay. So let's go on and move forward. Okay. I guess we've learned a lot. So when asked about education tax, you will not be speechless. You have a lot to say about the education tax. You already know the meaning, you know the objective of the act, right? You know those that are beneficiaries of this act, okay? In the allocation and disbursement of the fund received, you know those that are what beneficiaries, the universities, colleges of education, polytechnics, okay? We also talked about the board of trustees, okay? The members of the board of trustees, the compositions of the board of trustees, then their function, please, very important. Know the members of the board of trustees, the functions of the board of trustees, okay? The rates too, the offenses, and the penalties in what tertiary education act. Let's go forward to the next topic. So for our next topic, we'll be looking at what? Returns, assessment, and collection procedures. Very, very interesting topic. In fact, this is quite practicable, okay, in our day-to-day, for those that every company go through this process of returns, assessment, and collection period. So let's look at the objective of this class. What do we hope to gain during this class? First and foremost, we'll get to understand how the registration and filing of tax returns is all about, okay, the details and the process required. They also need to look at okay. Sorry for the break. Okay, let's continue. For returns, assessment, and collection period. So what do we hope to gain? The registration and filing of tax returns, then assessment procedures, okay? The procedures involved in assessment, collection procedures. Then we'll also look at what? TCC, tax clearance certificate. So all that is involved, okay? For filing of tax returns, first and foremost, for registration, okay, for filing of tax returns, every incorporated company in Nigeria is expected to file tax returns. So who? The relevant tax authority here is what? FIRS, which is Federal Inland Revenue Service. That's the tax authority responsible for what? For receiving the filing of what? Tax returns done by what? Companies. So every year, annually, which means every year, okay, all companies are expected to submit the words to file the to submit the following requirements. One, self-assessment return in the prescribed form. So there's a form that is usually filled, okay? The form by if you walk into any FRS office or you see a tax consultant, they usually have this form, okay? It is called a self-assessment form. The self-assessment form have all the necessary details to be filled. One, the name of the company, the accounting period that you are filing for, okay? The name of the company, the accounting period, the address of the company, the income generated for that period, and so on and so forth. All of these details, you just fill the form. Quite easy to fill, okay? It's a self-assessment form. As part of what's requirements. Secondly, you're also expected to submit the audited account, which means the financial statement, the account of the company that was audited by an external auditor. Then thirdly, the tax and capital allowances was computation. So these three are expected to be submitted on an annual basis towards FIRS. The form, that's that self-assessment form, is expected, that self-assessment will have a declaration. Okay, there's a part, it has a declaration. Okay, whoever is the director of the company, okay, or the company secretary will write the name and also sign. Okay, you need to what declaration just talks about the returns. You have to declare that, oh, the information given concerning the returns is true and is correct. It shows the current state of the what company's profits that has been computed, okay, in the documents that you presented alongside. And you're also saying that all particulars, all information given was true and complete. Because don't forget, this is self-assessment. It means the company was the one that was assessed itself and then gave the necessary information to what to FRS. It's not FRS that was assessing in this case. Then time to register. For every company, for every new company, okay, for every new company, you're expected to register with what FRS within 6 months of commencement of business. Within 6 months of commencement of business. Within 6 months of commencement of business. How many times have I said it? 3 times. So as a new company, please note what I said. I said commencement of business. I did not say incorporation of business. When a company gets registered with CS, the company is an incorporated company, okay? The date of incorporation is different from the date of commencement of business. You'll see some questions where they'll tell you XYZ Limited was incorporated on 1st January 2017. It commenced business on 1st August 2018. So here, you're making reference to what? The date of the commencement of business. So within 6 months, with my third example, if the company commenced business of 1st August 2018, okay, within 6 months is expected to submit. So let's count from August to 6 months time. You have August, September, October, November, December, January. So within August 2018 and January 2019, the company is expected to register with what FIRS. The registration process, what are the requirements? Okay, and what does it entail? Every new company that registered with FIRS have to register for what? Tax purpose. Okay, for registration with FIRS, there are usually 2 forms of registration. One, you'll be registering for your income tax, and you also be registering for your value added tax. Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, is the tax authority that are responsible for also collecting value added tax of companies. So your registration process are in 2 parts. One, for company income tax, and secondly, for value added tax. So while you are registering, you are going to have 2 different letters. One will be addressed for the registration of of the company for company income tax purpose, and then the registration of the company for value added tax purpose. So there are two types of letters that be required. But let's look at the first one. For income tax, what are the requirements? The registration letter, what should be the content of the registration letter? What information do FRS need in the letter being to be the letter that will be received on behalf of the company for processing? One, the letter must have the name of the company. Let's say the name of the company is Adesua Limited. That's the name of the company. The registered office of the company. In my CAC, the registered office, the address will be there, right? Then the business address of the company, if it's different, you also will state it. The precise nature of business, what am I into? General contracts, okay, whatever the nature of business of the company, that should be stated in the letter. Date of commencement of business. In this case, we have let's use our previous dates in the previous example, using 1st August 2018, date of commencement of the business. Name and address of bankers, okay? All the bank accounts of the company. Let's say I opened an account with Zenith Bank, okay? That will come out the name of the company, the name of the bank, sorry, the address of the bank. I also have account with First Bank, company account with First Bank. So the names of the bank will be stated there. The addresses of each of these banks will also be stated in the letter. Then you have the particulars of the major shareholders, okay? The name of the shareholders and every other details that is necessary, that deemed was necessary. Their positions, the name of the shareholders, their positions, okay? That is also included. Then for the registration of Then in addition to this letter, now I mentioned that you have a letter, okay, written for income tax. In addition to this letter, there are some documents that are also expected to be accompanied with this, okay? What are these documents that you're expected to submit in addition to that? One, certificate of incorporation, CAC certificate. I guess a lot of us would have seen it. That's certificate of incorporation of the company, memorandum and articles of association of the company, okay? Form CAC2, okay? For the Form CAC2, the form actually just shows the authorized shares of the company, okay? It's usually signed by one director. The form also contains details of the registered office of the company and so on and so forth. Then you have the Form CAC7. Okay, for Form CAC7, that one basically shows the share allotment of what it contains, particular of each of the directors, their position, the shares allotment, and so on and so forth. Then for value added tax, which is the second letter that you'll be submitting to FRS, okay, that one you just have to fill a form, okay? There's a copy, or is usually called a FAT form 001. So you just fill the form, and along with it, that's the VAT registration form, you also attach your certificate of incorporation. So these two documents are going along with your letter for the value added tax. But for company income tax, we have listed it above. And for tax return, when we say tax return, in this case, we're already talking about a company that has registered. Okay, we mentioned before that for a company that registered on an annual basis, you are expected to submit the following: the self-assessment form, the audited the audited accounts. Can you remember? Hope we can remember. Okay, let's go on. So to submit your tax return for the company, or for the company, what is required of you? All companies, including companies that are granted exemption from incorporation, at least once a year, they are expected to submit their notice of demand to FRS, file a return to FIRS, and the return must have the following documents. One, audited financial statement, very, very important. Secondly, the income tax and capital allowance computation schedule. Okay, the income tax, company income tax, and the capital allowance computation, okay, that will be included in the audited financial statement. Then a copy of the company income tax form. There's a form that will be filled for the company income tax. You also fill that one. The same, there's another form for education tax. So all of this will be what's included while filing for your tax returns. Then you also attach evidence of payment for company income tax liability and evidence of payment for what education tax liability. Okay. Excuse me. So what's the time limit for filing tax returns in Nigeria? For a new company and then for an existing company, what's the time limit? For every company is expected to what? To file its tax returns, its audited accounts, the tax and capital allowances computation with FRS, okay? However, for new company, within 6 months after the end of the company accounting, sorry, for all existing companies, within 6 months after the end of a company's accounting year, in the case of an old company, within 6 months after the end of a company's accounting year. So what it means is that every company is expected to have an accounting year. Okay? The general accounting year is usually from January to December of every year, okay? But not all companies have that as their accounting. Sorry, I'm talking about accounting, yes, accounting year period. So let's say for Adesua Limited, my accounting year is from every July to June of every year. That's my accounting period. So what it means is that from July to June, that is 1 year. Okay. So between June, 6 months within June of the following year and 6 months after, I should file my tax return to FIRS. Okay, to make it easier for us, let me use January to December. My accounting period is a period of my accounting year is December of every year. Okay, January to December, that is 1 year. Within 6 months after the company's accounting year, I'm expected to file my tax returns. Let's use year 2017 as an example. So it means for 2017, my accounting year will be what? 2018, January 2017 to December 2017. Okay, 6 months after, what it means is that from January 2018, please follow me, from January 2018 to June 2018, that's a period of 6 months after my accounting year. My accounting year is from January 2017 to December 2017. That's the accounting year, period of 1 year. Within 6 months after, January 2018 to June 2018, 6 months, I'm expected to file my tax return to FIRS. That's what that means. Please, during the course of this discussion, if you don't understand any part, don't forget, kindly send your questions to the chat room and we'll look at it after the class. Okay. Then for a new company, a company that is just for a new company, in the case of a newly incorporated company, within 18 months from the date of incorporation, okay, or 6 months after the end of the first accounting period. This one is straightforward, okay? Either 18 months of the date of incorporation, excuse me, or 6 months after the end of its first accounting period, whichever comes earlier. So time within which to pay tax assessed. Okay, what's the time frame? What's the time limit to in terms of what paying your tax? The time limit for payment of tax assessments, okay, for FRS is within 2 months after the service of notice upon the what company. However, after if the 2 months expires, okay, in this case, this is when FRS is the one what assessing the what company. Don't worry, I will explain this part when we go further. Penalty for non-compliance. If you don't comply with the following, if you don't file for tax return, what penalty is it will the company face? For Company Income Tax Act, okay, it makes provision for penalty for payment of penalty by any company that fails to comply with the requirement of filing of what tax return. Okay, for every defaulting company, in the first month, they will pay an amount of what 25,000 naira if they fail to file for their annual returns, and 5,000 for each subsequent month in which the failure continues. So let's use the last example I gave, Adesua Limited. Okay, I said our account is from January to December of every year. Remember, right? And then end of the following year, is set to file for her tax returns. If after January to June of the following year, I don't file my tax return, what penalty is my company liable to? In the first month that I failed to file, the first month after which I failed to file, which will be July, remember it's to June, which will be July, I will pay a sum of what 25,000 naira. For every subsequent month that the failure continue, for every subsequent month that I still fail to what to file, I'll keep paying what 5,000 naira. Please note, this payment that is being made by me for penalty, it's not the tax that I'm assessed to. That's not the company income tax. So that's just the penalty. So that will be in addition to the what company income tax that I'm expected to pay. I guess we are together. That's why FRS towards the end of every year, they'll start what announcing. They'll start announcing, sending reminders via different from their platform, their sites, news and all of that. You have people can do countdown, especially to a lot of companies that their accounting period is from January to December of every year. Okay, counts down, a month counts down, so you will not have to pay for this penalty. Okay, so what companies usually do within once the accounting year comes to an end, okay, they'll invite their external auditors to come and start what carrying out audits on their financial statement that's been prepared within that has been prepared by the company. Okay, at the end of the day, the audited financial statement, the tax computations, and every other form that has been filled will be what submitted to FRA. Okay, it's when they fail to do that after the 6 months after, that's when they are liable to pay this penalty. So let's go further. Then any director, manager, secretary, servant, staff, okay, in general, who has been found guilty, okay, of neglect in terms of not remitting this amount or not compliance of the above provision is liable to a fine of what 100,000 naira or imprisonment of 2 years. When you have to choose between paying 100,000 and imprisonment of 2 years. Anyway, this also depends on the how severe the case is. Okay, it depends. So let's look at other returns other than tax returns. Okay, are there other returns that are required by FRS that some companies should submit? Yes. days after the end addresses of all new well, sorry. Hello. My host, can you confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think I think my so let's continue. For banks, like I said earlier, okay, within 7 days, they are expected to submit the names of the company and the addresses to FRS. Then for stockbroking companies, okay, within 7 days after the end of each month, they are also expected to file the following words information on the transactions involved in the offer to the primary market. Okay, the details include types of offer, the services rendered, the amount of tax deducted at source, and the amount of value added tax payable. That's value added tax, VAT payable. Okay. Then also transactions involving operations in the secondary market. So other than the primary market, the secondary market too, the number and value of transactions carried out for relevant months, commission received or paid, the amount of tax deducted at source, and amount of value added payable. Okay. Then let's look at the assessment procedures. Let's look at the assessment procedures. When a company has filed its assessment return, okay, remember the assessment return comprises of the following documents that we have listed. Audited accounts. In fact, you should be able to recite these ones by now. Like audited the accounts, the tax computation, okay. The FRS, we accept the return. Once they file and they submit, FRS will accept it. If on accepting after receiving the returns being filed, okay, FRS also want to go through it. If they deem it satisfactory, okay, satisfactory, that would fine. Accurate. But however, sorry, I still apologize for the naturally fluctuating. So let's continue. Sorry for the breaking transmission. We're talking about the assessment procedures. Okay. So once the company files this assessment returns, submit document, FRS will go they are satisfied that the information provided by the company is true and it's complete, and then they accept the company income tax, the education tax, value added tax, and all others have been what remitted by the company. Okay, then let's look at self-assessment. When we say self-assessment, what do we mean? Remember, I think that one part that I skipped, I said I will talk about it in a later class. Self-assessment in Nigeria, basically the tax system, especially for company taxes, based on self-assessments, okay? Like Adesua Limited, I'm a company. I have an accountant working for me. Let's say the name of the accountant is Aminat. Okay. So as an accountant, she has all the financial information of Adesua Limited. Okay. At the end of the accounting here, she puts all the information together, prepares the financial statement, and then I could call on the company's external auditor. Those ones will come in audits the financial statements, then was if the external auditor are also our tax consultants, okay, they also prepare the tax computation and so on and so on. Let the company know the company income tax that it's due, education tax that is due, and so on and so forth. So in that case, it's self-assessment. I'm the company, I'm the one assessing myself based on information available in my company, the information provided by the accountant. Okay, the information provided by the accountant. That's what tax account the consultant we work with towards to get the tax due and the tax payable by my company. I hope you are following. If you do not understand any part, don't forget to drop your questions. Okay. Then that's self-assessment because FRS cannot see the 100% of the financial information that is present in the company. That is what I mean is that they cannot see 100% of the details that is present with the accountant of the company. Just the financial information. However, nowadays, FRS have access to the accounts of companies. Especially last year, cases where they wrote to some companies and they closed their accounts. The companies did not have access to the accounts because they, yes, actually owing FRS amount of money. Okay, but these days through our bank, BVN, okay, it's not easily accessible. The informations of companies are easily accessible by the can estimate even year, they can just go to the account of the company and an idea of the total revenue that was generated by the company within year. So if at the end of the accounting year, okay, I claim that I have why submitting my audited financial statement, okay, I claim that the company generated revenue of 1 million naira. Okay, I submit all the necessary documents. Okay, FIS will now go through my account. I have an account with Zenith Bank, company account with First Bank, with Sterling Bank. They observe I have accounts with 5 different banks. Okay, and the revenue I can see from their end is like 10 times of that money that I'm actually that I'm declaring that I've submitted to them. Do you understand? So in that case, they will believe that the information submitted by that company, the company has actually done self-assessment, but the information submitted is not complete or accurate. That's where in such cases, FRS will now write to the what company, okay? That is, oh, if you actually say your revenue was not up to this amount, you should be able to what explain yourself. So the tax consultant can now be the one, the what can be the middleman between the tax authority and the company. So let's move on. Self-assessment in which the taxpayer is granted to create full tax liability on the taxpayer. Okay, the taxpayer pays the tax due and files his tax return with evidence of payment on or before date. FRA shall accept all tax returns submitted by the tax and carry out necessary checks to ensure that all required information is, it says, shall accept all tax returns submitted by taxpayer and carry out necessary checks to ensure that all required information. How do they carry out these necessary checks? They already have information, they have access to the banks, okay? So they can just do a rough estimate and just to find out if the what to ensure that all the required information are accurate, okay, they are appropriate, all the information in the tax returns, okay, and so the company that files a self-assessment return is required to pay the tax due in one lump sum. So let's say your tax due is Additional Limited, a tax due, let's say a tax due is 600,000. So I'm expected to pay that amount once to FRS or the dates that I'm filing the tax for the tax return. Okay. However, FRS can also allow me, but I will need my tax consultant will need to put that in. I will need to put that in writing, okay, to FRS, and they will approve. They can also allow me to pay in installment in 6 months. The installment should not be more than 6 installments. So they can allow me to pay. I cannot tell them that, oh, in my letter to the relevant to FRS, I let them know that they should kindly allow me pay this 600,000 naira tax liability in 3 different installments. So the first can be 200,000, the next 200,000, and the other one 200,000. Okay. I also state that I intend to pay the make the payment of the tax liability. So either you pay on the lump sum or you're allowed to pay in installments. However, that has to be approved by FRS. Okay. So an application has to be written to FRS for installment payment of tax and to be accompanied with proof of payment of the first installment. So the first installment of 200,000, I'd have gone to pay it in back. In addition to that, I will also add the letter. So they need to see the proof that I've paid the first sum of installment, which is 200,000. And then the other 2 installments, the dates I intend to pay them, all of that will be accompanied with the necessary document for self-assessment. I believe we understood that. Okay. So let's go further. Additional assessments. If discovers, okay, or is of the opinion that a company liable to pay tax has not, one, either has not been assessed or has been assessed or an amount which is less than the amount actually chargeable. Okay, within 6 years following that year, okay, let me explain this. In this case, there can also be a case of additional assessment. Additional assessment comes in 2 forms. Okay. So what it means is that is either a company that is liable to pay tax has not been assessed. The company has not done self-assessment. In fact, there are a lot of companies that are not paying tax in Nigeria, which is not supposed to be so. Okay. In this case, there's a company that has not been assessed, or there's a company that actually pays an amount which is less than the amount that is actually expected to remit. Okay, in this case, what's the implication of this provision? The implication is that if within the 6 years allowed, what FRS will now do, if it's already an existing company, okay, and then for 6 years, they notice that the amount that has been the company has been remitting for tax purposes is actually less than what the company is actually expected to remit. For example, let me make it easier for us to understand. XYZ Limited has been in existence for 10 years. Okay. The company do not declare, do not submit 100%, do not submit accurate details to FRS. Okay, so when they are paying their tax, what they are paying is actually less than what they are actually liable to. So in this case, if FRS find out and they decide to carry out audits, they'll go to the premises of the company and carry out an audit. They can go as far back as 6 years and then start assessing the company based on the information that is available. If they find out that that company has been paying less than what it's supposed to pay, okay, there are penalties according to the law, company income tax law. FRS can go as far back as what, 6 years. Then if they notice differences between what was paid and what is due by the company, or what the company is liable to, they can now give what, an additional assessment to the what company to pay. So okay. Now we have best of judgment assessment. For FRS, FRS will assess a company to tax based on best of judgment. Okay. So best of judgments are usually under the following situations. One, where a company files its returns, audited and tax commission, the tax authority may refuse to assess same if found unsatisfactory. If the information submitted is not satisfactory to FRS, okay, they can proceed to determine what, based on best of judgment, they can determine the company's total profit and raise an assessment on that what amount. Like I said previously, I said FRS now have access to this account, so they can just go through the accounts of this company from what they can see, and we can estimate that, oh, the total the revenue here we can see for this company is about 10 million. If you remove the expenses, okay, net of the amounts that were debited, okay, let's say their total profit plus or minus could be 5 million naira, but here what they are submitting in the audited statement is 1 million naira. You can see the huge gap, the difference of 4 million naira. So they can now decide to give a best of judgment based, they can calculate, estimate total profit and give you an assessment based on that amount. That's one scenario. Second, where a company has failed to submit a self-assessment return. A company do not assess itself and submit and file for it, file its tax as at 20, okay, or the will pay that is liable to tax. In that case, FRS can proceed to pay out best was the total profit of such a company and raise assessment for that company. Okay. Let's continue. Back duty assessments. Okay, back duty assessments. When we say back duty assessment, what do you mean? In this case, a taxpayer or a representative has committed fraud, okay? Either through willful default or out of neglect, okay? In connection with the tax assessed on it, FRS is empowered to assess such company to additional tax. So if a taxpayer has committed fraud, either by default or out of neglect, okay, FRS is actually empowered to carry out what, additional tax on that company in order to boot any able to the fraud. Okay, the additional tax referred to above is raised by the revenue at any time, as often as it may consider necessary without a time limit. Service of notice of assessment. When is FRS expected to give a notice of assessment, okay, to a company? FRS shall what, arrange to serve or send by registered post, usually send through post, okay, to any company or the name of any company, whoever is chargeable, whoever they are sending notice of assessment to. The notice assessment includes these 3 details. One, the amount of total profits that they think the company has what has generated within that period, the tax payable, and the place at which such tax will be what paid. They can refer you to the nearest they can refer you to the tax office that you expect to what remit your tax to. Okay. Then final and conclusive assessments. When we say final and conclusive assessment, for us to say a tax is final or conclusive, what do we mean? So what we mean is that one, no valid objection or appeal has been lodged against the amount of profit assessed on a company within the time allowed according to what law. The details the total amount of tax, total profit submitted based on the company. There is no objection to it. There is no valid objection or appeal. In that case, it is what final and conclusive. Secondly, if the amount of total profit has been agreed on by the taxpayer after objection has been determined by us, in that case, it's also what final. Then the amount of total profit has been determined on appeal. For on appeal, probably when FIRS has informed the company that, oh, this is the total revenue, this is the total profit we've been able to, that we feel your company generated with this accounting period. Okay, let's say the consultants will appeal to FIRS, probably bring supporting document. So at the end of the day, they can decide to what agree after appealing and all, agree on a certain amount that the the company should pay or remit. In that case, conclusive, is final, and it was conclusive. Collection procedures. You mentioned that before. Okay, for collection, tax payable is supposed to be in one lump sum. However, they can also allow installment of no more than what, six, no more than six. Time limit for paying tax. Okay, time limit for tax depend on taxpayers determined by assessment rates, but also measure the time limits. Okay, for every company after the counting, within 6 months, they are expected to what, file. And in filing, in filing, you're also expected to submit what, a copy of the evidence of payment. Yeah, we mentioned that in our previous class. Then any assessments raised by FRS, so when they say, within 2 months, company notice within 2 months, company is expected to what, to, if there is no objection or no appeal, they are expected to pay within what, or latest after 14th day of December of the assessment year of which the taxes was charged. Any balance must be paid. In case of installment, balance must be paid what, no later than what, about what currency of tax charge on a company shall be paid in the currency of the transaction. In the previous Okay. Okay, we are together now. Currency of payment of tax. Okay. When we talked about withholding tax, mentioned that the currency of the transaction is that which you remit the withholding tax to. Same applies to company income tax. Okay, company income tax will be paid in the currency of the transaction. If the currency of the transaction is dollar, it means it will be what? That it will be remitted in the currency in which the income was what received. If a company's transactions are in foreign currency, tax shall be payable in that what currency. Okay. Penalty for late payment of tax. What's the penalty for late payment of tax? If tax assessed on the company is not paid within the time statutory according to law. Okay, we've mentioned before that for company income tax, if you do not file, okay, you pay 25,000 naira. The month after the following month after 6 months, okay, 6 months after the accounting year end, and then if you still don't file, you keep paying 5,000 naira for every subsequent month. But for the penalty, okay, if the company do not pay within the statutory time, the time that is allowed according to law, penalty of an amount equal to 10% per annum of the amount of tax payable. The amount of tax payable, you pay 10% of it per annum, and it will be at the interest of the bank lending rates within that period of time. Okay. Then for enforcement procedures, let's look at that. When a company fails to pay company income tax, okay, FRS, what are they empowered to? They are empowered to either enforce payments or recover tax due through any of the methods stated below. FRS are empowered to do this. One, they are allowed to distrain on the taxpayers' goods. Okay, they can seize the taxpayers' goods. They are other forms, they are bonds, securities. Okay, that was why then last year when a lot of taxpayers did not pay, when those that were owing, FRS actually had access to their accounts. Okay, and they were able to freeze their accounts for a period of time. Then FRS also they can also distrain upon land, premises, or places owned by taxpayer, the goods, properties, etc. However, if this is not done, after keeping the goods or their properties for a period of 14 days, and the taxpayer still fails to pay the tax due, cost and the charges, as the tax due, both the tax due, the penalties, and all the costs involved, FRS may sue a taxpayer for recovery of a tax due by filing an action in a court of competent jurisdiction, or where a company is in business as a ship owner or charter, or let's say the company has been in default of tax for a period of 3 months, FRS may recover tax by issuing a certificate to Nigerian Customs Service stating the name and address of the ship owner and particulars of the tax or default. So basically, they're empowered to withhold the taxpayer. Either they try to enforce payments or they recover the tax due. So in the case where they try to enforce payment and that's not still done, they'll try to recover the tax due, even going to the extent of seizing the goods and so on and so forth, as we have listed above. Then let's look at tax clearance certificate lastly, TCC. What is tax clearance certificate? Some of us may have seen tax clearance certificate. Okay, I don't want to assume everybody has seen it actually. So tax clearance certificate, this certificate is actually issued by relevant tax authority, okay? That the federal tax authority or the state tax authority. That is either FRS in terms of companies or for individuals, the state boards of internal revenue. For instance, if I'm an individual resident in Lagos, okay, the state board of internal revenue will be what? LRS, Lagos Internal Revenue Service, as an individual, okay. So tax clearance certificate is either issue, if it's for a company, FRS issues a tax clearance certificate. If it's an individual, the state in which the individual is resident in issues the tax clearance certificate to the what? Individual. It shows the tax clearance certificate, it shows the tax position of the taxpayer to whom it is what? Issued. In fact, these days, if you want to be involved in contracts, and one of the first requirements they always ask is your tax clearance certificate. You want a certificate to prove that you've remitted your tax due, okay, within a certain period of time, okay. The certificate is issued upon application by the taxpayer. So what it means that the taxpayer will write an application to the relevant tax authority to issue the certificates, okay. The relevant tax authority has to ensure that the taxpayer is satisfied that the taxpayer has actually remitted its tax due, is no longer liable to the relevant tax authority. Okay, the certificate must be issued within 2 weeks of demand by the taxpayer. Within 2 weeks at which the taxpayer demands for its TCC, the relevant tax authority is expected to reissue it. Otherwise, the relevant tax authority must give good reasons for delay or denial. But in fact, in reality, not actually practice these days, man. Your TCC can actually take more than 2 weeks in either FRS offices or state board internal revenue services, okay. They'll tell you they have a lot of work to do, especially towards when it's close to the end or the beginning of a particular year, when people will need their TCC for contracts and so on and so forth, okay. So, but meanwhile, for the payments of, okay, let's look at the tax clearance certificates. What's the content of tax clearance certificates? Tax clearance certificates basically covers the last 3 years of assessment of the company or of the individual, okay. The tax clearance certificate covers the tax clearance certificate number, okay, the tax office that issued the tax clearance, the date of issue, the date the tax clearance was issued, the name of the company will be stated in tax clearance certificate. The registration the number, ROC number of the company. That number is usually on the CAC. Okay. Date of incorporation of the company, taxpayer identification number. Excuse me. Now, it's compulsory for for companies to have a tax identification number. Even as individuals, please, your various offices, you are paying payee, right? Okay. Ensure you have a TIN number. Okay. Effective business address of the company is also stated on the tax clearance certificate. The revenue stroke turnover of that company for the 3 years, okay. If it's a new company, you necessarily not see the details of the last 3 years. Assessable profit stroke loss, the total profits, tax payable, the tax paid, the tax that was paid for the different years, okay. Then if there's any outstanding tax by the company or the individual, it will be stated in tax clearance certificate, the source of income, other comments, then the expiration date of the tax clearance certificate. Before the relevant tax authority grants you the tax clearance certificate, what are the conditions required? The following conditions that were needed. One, the tax has to be paid up to date. So you have to be clear, you have to be free. You have to ensure you're no longer liable. You are not in company income tax, education taxes for companies, and so on and so forth. For individuals, you are also not paying any tax up to date. Penalties and interest rates have to be what paid. Returns have to be filed up to date, and there is no outstanding tax queries, audits, or what investigations. So these four conditions have to be met before you are what before any company or individual is issued a tax clearance certificate. Then let's look at transactions. Transactions for which tax clearance certificate is what's required. What transaction do you need TCC for? Okay, when you apply for government loan for an industry or business, registration of motor vehicle, you need your TCC. Application of firearms license in Nigeria, you need your TCC. Application for foreign exchange control permission. So if you need to remit funds outside Nigeria, you request for your TCC. You can see it's needed for a lot of things. Okay, application for certificate of occupancy, application of awards. If government wants to give a company contract or an individual contract or an agency, okay, registered company, you have to present your TCC. Application for approval of building plans, trade license, transfer of real property. For import and export license, they also require what's your TCC. For pools, gaming license, registration, to register as a contractor, your tax clearance certificate will be required. Registration, your for distributorship too, your tax clearance certificate will also be what? Will also be required. Confirmation of appointment by government as chairman or member of public board. Those of us that want to go into okay, politics, you also need your tax clearance certificate. Okay, stamping of guarantors form for Nigerian passport, application for registration of limited liability company of the business name. Okay, allocation of market stores, etc. So many uses. Okay, yes, there are lots. Application for plot of land, your TCC will be what's required. So what is the procedures for processing tax clearance certificates? Okay, if it's a new company, you're expected to have registered with FRS to get your tax identification number, which is a TIN. So the company will first, before you need to register with FRS, get your tax identification number, then you submit the following documents: certificate of incorporation, memorandum and articles of association, form CAC2 and form CAC7. I mentioned them previously, okay, and I also stated the contents of these two forms, okay. The information contained in the registration letter should include the name of the company, almost the same, the details are almost similar to the details of while you're registering with FRS as a new company, okay? Registered office, business address, the nature of business, the commencement date of the business, the name and address of the banks that the company have accounts with, particulars of what major shareholders. Then you also register with FRS of anything applies there. Then let's look at for an existing company. So the application for tax clearance certificate. So as soon as the company has uploaded and has submitted hard copies of his returns and evidence of payment of income, okay, to FRS office. Sorry, that's a mistake. That's actually FRS, okay? FRS office. The company can then apply for TCC electronically via FRS online application portal. So now it's very easy. You just go to FRS portal and apply for your TCC. Knowing after submitting the hard copies of your returns and evidence of payment of income tax. Then for the processing and insurance of TCC, as soon as the company has filed the application for TCC electronically, okay, FRS will then commence the process. It's usually for a maximum of 2 weeks, but in Nigeria, most times it's usually more than that, okay? So however, FRS shall approve TCC within 2 weeks of application. That's 14 days, 14 working days actually. So once the TCC is approved, an electronic email confirmation will be sent to the company and you'll be asked to download a copy of your TCC. So penalties. For the purpose of TCC, okay, if you give an incorrect information that relates to any matter affecting the liability of the company, or you falsify any documents required by FRS for the transaction, okay, you're liable. That means you've committed an offense and you're liable to a conviction of a fine not exceeding 200,000 or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 years. So is either 200,000 or a term of what not exceeding 3 years, or both. It depends on how severe the case is. So what are the problems of tax clearance certificates? So although tax clearance certificate is actually issued for tax compliance, okay, for the preceding year, for the last 3 years, the details are showed for an existing company, okay? Tax authorities sometimes require that taxpayers comply with tax payments to dates of application of the certificate. They want to ensure that you are not owing any liability. So, FRS, in fact, tax authorities, how they love money. Okay, they often pose a challenge as the revenue could use the opportunity to issue additional, okay, they can also use that as an opportunity, okay, to issue additional assessments, okay, and demand for payment before issuing certificates, especially when they know that the companies or individuals desperately need this certificate, tax clearance certificates. So basically that is all for tax clearance certificates, okay. This topic, this part for the returns assessments could come in both your section A or your section B. However, please, this knowledge is important, especially in day-to-day work practice. It's important to know these things, okay? You can be asked at any time, okay? Just ensure you go through after this class, probably tomorrow, you go through the material again. If there's any part you do not understand, okay, you can call me, chat me up, or send me a text, and I'll respond as soon as I can. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for paying attention, I believe. So you can ask your questions. Let me go to the chat room now and take the questions we have for today. Okay, there are no questions for now. Do we all understand all that we've talked about today? My host, kindly unmute their mics so I can get their response. Thank you. Prof, are you there? Okay. Still no questions. All right. So Temitope. Okay. I believe we understand. However, during the course of the week, while you still go through, you can always chat me. Thank you very much for today. Thank you very much for today. Okay, my phone number. All right. 081 866 53 263. Let me call it again. 081-866-53263.
Thank you.
Wonderful night's rest. See you till our next class. Bye.